Yes. Good. I'm here with Dr. Willie Soon, physicist, climate researcher, skeptic, and speaker at our 16th International Climate and Energy Conference here in Vienna. Thank you for coming. What I would like to be, what I'm interested the most is, what is your current research project?
Okay, my current research program is actually rather large programmatic to try to investigate the issues, especially, of course, we focus on mainly science, so we don't like politics as much. We focus on science and basically to re-examine a lot of this presumption and in fact even firm conclusion that was, I think, wrongly reached by the United Nations Intergovernmental on Climate Change, IPCC. So we study, for example, the nature of the thermometer data that represent global temperature curve. So we study that. We study, for example, the forcing, what they call the forcing, what causes the climate to change. So we examine in details, being that I myself is a solar physicist that specialized in the study of the sun for close to 35 years. So we really study the issues in careful details about how IPCC reached certain conclusion. And then, in fact, we pointed out, we published all this work so far to demonstrate that IPCC is just really speaking with rather no authority and anti-scientific in the sense that they manipulated the research situation and the current understanding. So it's that kind of research that we're doing. So we're doing many aspects. We're trying to study sea level change problem. We're trying to study the nature of carbon dioxide moving around the different reservoir of the Earth system. So from the atmosphere to the ocean to the soil to the trees, the plant kingdom, the biological kingdom, so on and so forth. So it's a very wide range of programmatic research that we hope to be systematically do the kind of research that is necessary for us to reach a proper scientific understanding and conclusion. Yes?
All right, and so this means you heavily criticized the latest IPCC report?
Oh, yes.
Or doesn't it have to do any, I mean, is it not related to the IPCC report at all?
Well, you know, you can always say that you pursue a scientific question, a scientific issue, independent of anything. But the fact that the dominant prevailing understanding, especially in the public sphere, like you say, housewives, students, university researchers, so on and so forth, including politicians, that because the influence of IPCC is so strong, and plus that, of course, the media is rather what you call like a propaganda machine that keep running the recorder, saying that IPCC is right, IPCC conclusion is so and so. But it turns out that just about 99%, I will give IPCC 1%, 99% of what IPCC say is mostly all untrue thing, incorrect and unscientific. In fact, I call it anti-scientific, which means you are against science. So as a scientist, I am a very free-minded person, but I cannot stand around not saying anything because we are active scientists. We publish in all the peer-reviewed literature. We all know that peer review is very, very important. And publish in a journal where you have criticism from your colleagues and then you try to reply to it. If the result is wrong, you would rather not publish the paper. But if the result is correct, you should publish the paper and let the conclusion be standing there and then let other people to see, you know, whether it should be challenged or not. Because most of our work so far, I think, had reached a rather directly opposite to what IPCC has been suggesting. For example, IPCC has reached a conclusion. This is from the 6th assessment report. People should know that IPCC is a, like you say, intergovernmental body, which means they are not a scientific body. They claim that they're making review, but they also claim that they make very comprehensive review that is objective, serious, and then, you know, but unfortunately, none of that is true. They are overplay their hand, in my humble opinion. So every of their conclusion is all need to be challenged, need to be retold because it's not correct. And therefore, you can see the consequence is rather huge. It's not like small, tiny thing. Oh, okay, we can forget about it. But it's not, because what they are trying to propose in terms of energy policy is rather drastic, and then with no basis. And that's very unfortunate. I think we should not stand for this, and then the public should hear more about it, or at least demand to hear what is your evidence.
One of the most famous problems or infamous problems of the IPCC reports of the last years was this debate on the medieval warm period versus the Little Ice Age. What's your position on this?
Oh, my position is that medieval warm period is real, and it doesn't, well, there's a statement to say that it exists only in Europe, but unfortunately, my research has proven, about 20 years ago, I published a very major review paper that I show that the existence of medieval warm period is not only in Northern Europe or Greenland. Yes, we know that Greenland was green back then, so the Viking can actually live there, right? And then the Hannibal can cross all the Alps. There was no ice, moving large distances. It shows you that the planet was green. England was able to produce wine, there's vineyard and things like that. In fact, even all the street name reminds you that medieval warm period was one of these real phenomena. Not only that, you can see that in New Zealand. The glaciers disappear in New Zealand. In the forests of Brazil and Argentina, the forest ranges expand by almost 300 kilometers. Huge. These are all real phenomenon. And then for IPCC to try to come and essentially erase the history is incorrect. People should know that before the climate change over the last 1,000 years should look like there's a medieval warm period, and then by about 1300, 14th century onward, it started to cool, reaching to a period called the Little Ice Age. The reason why it's called Little Ice Age is basically because the glaciers all over the world started to grow. In Switzerland, it's very well known. You saw a picture of churches, and then the valley of the ice is pushing down. In fact, I always say that people in the church must be praying, please, don't let the glacier continue to grow. And then indeed, by 1900, before the beginning of 20th century, things started to warm up again, right? And therefore, the ice kind of disappeared from now. What I'm trying to say is that nature, through the relationship within, I would say, in fact, we have example to show that why is it that this phenomenon happened. As a scientist, it's not good to just describe that this phenomenon exists. We want to know why and what. So the explanation actually for this medieval warm period, Little Ice Age, and the current warm period is actually having to do with the sun. It's actually a lot more sunlight during medieval warm period, and then the sun turned inactive. All of a sudden, it get dimmer. For example, there's a very famous period called the medieval Maunder minimum period from 1645 to 1715. Galileo first pointed the telescope to the sun and observed that there were a lot of sunspots. 1609, 1610. And then by 1650, the Observatoire de Paris director, many of them observed the sun religiously. Almost every day they couldn't see spot. They say, maybe Galileo is pulling a stunt on us. And then, but they didn't realize. By now we understand actually the sun went into a very quiet period, much dimmer. That's why you have the Little Ice Age phenomenon. And you know what happened? What happened in the 19th century? The sun started to brighten up again. I think this, in that sense, is a very natural explanation, and it's a correct scientific explanation. Remember, science is just not what I just described. We quantify it by numbers, showing that how much the energetic inputs are needed to produce a Little Ice Age and then to warm it up again. What this actually teaches you is that the climate system is not the kind of system that IPCC imagined, that is sitting there passively just depending on the rise of the carbon dioxide. It comes and goes in a, what you call, cyclical method, like periodic. And we have to add this firm scientific knowledge. In fact, we not only know for 1,000 years, we know for 10,000 years, we know even further. We have evidence that this climate comes and go, warm come and go, and ice ages come, come and go.
Cycles is a good keyword, because there was a physicist named Gera.
Yes.
And he developed in his paper of 1999 and then 2001. There were two papers where he is developing his idea of a 1100 years cycle. What's your position on that? And was there any progress since the publication of these two papers, or does this play any role, or did these ideas somehow coming to a halt?
Well, the evidence in which to provide the evidence for such an oscillation over every 1,000 years, every 1,500 years, and things like that is real. Because since Gerard Bond work, which is actually measuring the small little rock stone that come from iceberg, moving towards the south, and then dropping this in the stone, where you go ocean sediment, you dig it out. By the way, the two papers are extremely prestigious. I'm glad that you know about this. It was published in the top journal, it's Science. It's called Journal Science. But since then, we have many more evidence to demonstrate that this 1,000 year cycle and 1,500 years and 1,800 years and 2,200 years cycles are found just about every evidence that we have. Because it's true that since 2001, his last paper, by the way, Gerard Bond passed away after the paper or so. He has a cancer, so he passed away. But there are a lot more work has been demonstrated that this effect is not only real, that you can see it everywhere from all kinds of sediment. For example, ocean sediment, you can see that. And then lake sediment, you can also see in things called a stalagmite, that you can see in cave. In Europe, there was some famous cave actually in Austria.
And what do you see there? Is there
they see this cycle. They see this cycle of 1,000 years.
How can you see a cycle in a stalagmite?
Wow, because of the formation related to the hydrology, you can show. In fact, stalagmite is so good that you can trace year to year, and then they have very, very old kind of dated things, so they can actually demonstrate that this effect exists. Yes, you can have record for 5,000 years or 10,000 years that you can show this whole thing. Not only that, I think there's some very good work from it's the European, I forget which exact call. They even able to get some very, very old stalagmite. Like about 100,000 years ago, the Earth is about the same as now, called the Holocene, but there was a warm period called the Eemian period, interglacial, when you don't have too much ice on the pole. That they were able to show that there are certain portion that shows this kind of cycle, 1,000 year cycle, for example. So it really very convincing. I think the data are real, and then there is a way in which that you can try to see that where this cycle come from. Again, the roots, after a lot of investigation, a lot of careful research, show that it has something to do with the sun. Yes, the sun by itself
is coming back to the sun.
Yes, coming back to the sun.
I have two more questions.
Please.
Do you know Randall Carson's work?
Yes. In fact, I just befriended him. Yes.
Really?
Yes. Okay. Randall Carson. Yes.
And what do you say that these massive rocks are laying around in the prairies of North America?
Oh, yes.
And there's not much research about it. How can one explain this? Is there research?
It does require a lot of some of that is a bit related to archaeological sciences and this and that. By the way, let me describe what Randall Carson he's, I think, mostly an archaeologist, but he's a geologist and hydrologist in the sense that he studied water flow. Yeah, the thing that the evidence that you mentioned was basically a period that happened about 12 to 13,000 years ago, 12,600 years ago. There was a time period called the Younger Dryas.
Right.
Where climate all of a sudden become extremely cold. And then it started to warm up again. And it was the flushing of the melted water created this really deep scar on the rocks and showing you that it's impossible to be any other forces. It kind of explained why nature is so powerful in some sense. Yes, and I think that there are works going on, but you see, in now how science is being funded is a big question. Because partly I would have to say related to this CO2 religion, that they believe so much in CO2. Everything they try to study, they try to invoke carbon dioxide to do any of that. But it's just not sustainable. There's no such evidence.
I mean, I found this very fascinating whenever he showed this huge dry waterfall.
Yes.
Looking like a totally dry Niagara Fall, but like 4 or 5 times as broad, as wide.
Yes.
I find this totally fascinating.
Oh no, they found another one, like another asteroid impact underneath the glacier. They have this ground penetration. It's called a Tiwatia thing. The basin is huge. It shows, and that actually they were able to date the timing of the thing. Yeah, it's also about 12,000, 13,000 years ago. That sort of thing.
I'm glad that you're also interested in this.
Oh yes, I am. Yes.
Last question. They also tried to scandalize your work. You want to elaborate on this a little bit? I mean, how did this end up? I did not follow this.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been a scientist, I would say, ever since I was born. I love science so much that for me the priority is God, family, and truth. So it's all that. So money has very little influence on me. Of course, everybody needs money.
Yeah, sure.
And I need money mainly just to buy food, buy a house, can live. But indeed, people try, especially a group called Greenpeace, the activists. They've been very unhappy with me because I'm a rather successful scientist, because I publish a lot of paper, and then occasionally I have occasion to come and speak in public forum like this, which is EIKE 16 International Climate Conference. So I'm very proud to be here, that I get called. It's a duty to come here to explain the science that I've done, the research. I've dedicated my whole life doing nothing but science, and be truthful to scientific principle. You probably have heard during my talk that I say that I can replicate what IPCC is doing. I can also provide an alternative. That's the duty of science. You have to have replication. You have to be able to formulate what the famous, since we're in Vienna, Austria, I want to mention the famous science philosopher by the name of Karl Popper. He was born here, of course, he lived in England, but he actually formulated this very right thing. A hypothesis is not scientific if you cannot find evidence to reject it. See, you cannot just do blind belief. That's what IPCC is doing. Keep saying that CO2 causes global warming, CO2 causes... They say it a million times, but it doesn't make it so. You need to show the evidence. Where is it that the CO2 causes the global warming? Because all the warming that I believe that we have observed, even the last 50 years or so, which IPCC conclude that it must be only atmospheric CO2. In fact, our paper that's been published about last year, we published 2 papers, demonstrate that no, this thing can be explained easily by the sun brightening up, even in the last 50 years. And then it has a possibility, since people want to know about future, it has a possibility of coming down a little bit. But prediction is always dangerous, so I'm not going to speculate further. What I'm trying to say is that we can easily explain what we have observed for the last 100, 150 years or so by the changes in the light output, just like we explained the 1,000 years that we talk about middle warm period, little ice age, and current warm period. And in finer detail, we can also show that indeed demonstrate to you that there are full internal consistency with this hypothesis, and it's totally rejectable. Because if the evidence were to go otherwise, it would disprove me. Yes?
And also, I would say, if you see a correlation, this could also mean that temperature increase is the same effect. Is an effect of the same cause like carbon dioxide increase. Like if you have variations in the sun, this could also cause the carbon dioxide increase or decrease.
Yes, that idea is worthy of studying. Yes, mainly the mechanism is a very famous thing called the Henry law that's been known in chemistry for hundreds of years, at least 150 years, where the main idea is just simply like your soda, right? You open it up, when it started to warm up, all the bubble disappear. Right, because you warm out, you cannot keep. When you cool, you can keep more gases, and that is a very well-known phenomenon. It's completely verifiable. In fact, it's a principle. Okay, it's called Henry law.
Yeah, I know.
It's very rare to have a law in science, but these are the definite universal truth that clearly a brightening sun could warm the ocean surface. By the way, if you want to think about contrast between CO2 and the sun emit in the bright visible wavelengths. Sunlight. So sunlight actually can penetrate the ocean layers a little bit. UV, you can go deeper. But that means you can warm this ocean surface easily. Think about it from the other way. If you use a CO2 which operate in the infrared radiation, okay, and mainly if you use the word 15 micron, infrared, a little bit that I cannot see, but if you shine, we can create laser like that. You can do the experiment. You try to shine the laser on the water, see whether you can boil it. But if you use the sunlight, if you over time in the proper way, you actually will evaporate the water molecule, creating water vapor and all that stuff. So it's a very completely testable kind of science. The proposition that we propose is very natural in my humble opinion.
So we are coming to the end. It was very interesting. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you the best of success for your future research.
No, thank you, EIKE, for inviting all of us, and not only me, many great professors, including Professor John Clauser, who won the Nobel Prize in 2022 in physics, and then Professor William Harper, and then many more professors, Neil Shavith and Hendrik Swensmark, Nicolas Cafata. So I'm so glad that at least an organization like yourself would like to hear about science, and I think science informed you, give you the right tool to make decision, and one ought to not neglect it. You understand? That's what I mean. And IPCC, in some sense, has been neglecting the science. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Was a little bit longer than I thought, but it was so no, not sorry. It's very interesting. We can also have a longer interview.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. I mean, why should I? I mean, I'm not a TV station. I can do my own
we can free form. No, I try.